Welcome back to the third section. Well, it's actually the fourth section, but it is the third kind of like book section. And so it's the siddhi, which is liberation, the 39th siddhi of liberation. The crux point. Perhaps from reading and contemplating this 39th gene key, you can begin to have a sense of what happens as this same energy hits the highest planes of frequency. There is always a point where the gift suddenly makes the quantum leap into the siddhi, and the blossom becomes the fruit. In this case, the 39th gift, dynamism, becomes liberation, and it finally forgets itself entirely. The 39th gift, the 39th gene key, is highly individualistic. It has to be, in order not to be taken in by the status quo. Unique creativity has to break out of all conditioned patterns in order to rise to the heights of genius. The ringing of seeking provides the pressures that drive human beings to eventually transcend themselves. At a siddhic level, an interesting thing occurs when all the genetic pressure breaks through to a higher dimension. Consciousness merges back into the totality, which means that it has to give up its greatest gift, individual freedom. There is a great irony here. Only in giving up the illusion of your individual freedom can you receive the even greater gift, the liberation of being. Few people are able to make the transition from creative genius to divinity, because you must give up the everything that appears to fuel your creativity. You must give up the very thing that appears to fuel your creativity. Your individuality. To the genius, the giving up of one's individuality seems akin to death, but in order to attain the siddhic state, you must pass through the gift level of consciousness and give up your seeking. This means that with every one of the 64 gene keys, you will have to give up your hard-earned gift in all of its glory in order to make the leap to the final level. Dynamism, as we have seen, feeds upon itself. To be dynamic is to create more and more possibilities through action. The byproduct of dynamism is that it serves many people, which in turn raises its vibration. The more people you serve, the more rarefied your frequency becomes until one day you reach the crux point. The crux point is not easy to describe, it cannot be predicted, and it cannot be prepared for. Mystics have usually described it as the death and a subsequent rebirth. In the case of the 39th siddhi, it feels like a physical death because this is such a physical dynamic gene key, you have to put your entire being on the line. All your plans, creativity, work, intent, and service must be surrendered into a single vanishing point. When this event arrives, there is no mistaking it. It comes with the guarantee that you will transcend. There are no failures. In this sense, you can only move through the tunnel of agony until it turns to ecstasy. Liberation is one of the strangest phenomenon. It is perceived by the unliberated as an experience, even though it is not an experience, since there is no one to experience it. Even though liberation is often described as an event, it is not an event. Even though it appears to happen within time, it does not. It occurs outside of time. There are no sounds that can be vibrated that resonate with this phenomenon. There are no words to describe liberation because there is no process to describe. It is perhaps best understood as analogous to dying. Liberation is beautifully represented through the metaphor of the warrior's death. A warrior's life is one of preparation, adversity, energy, and finally, death. The perfect death for the warrior is always to die in battle. In ancient society, it was a great honor for the warrior to die in battle. The 38th siddhi is the siddhi of honor. All of this is a metaphor for something that exists at a much higher level than we generally realize. Of course, the warrior is you, the independent human being. Your battlefield is the world, and the war is life. The true warrior is the one who is willing to die for the highest cause, whether that is represented by your country, your cause, your brothers and sisters, or your children. The important part of the metaphor is that the warrior has to give his or her life for another, just as Christ died for humanity upon the cross. All in all, as in all of the great legends and stories, there is always a rebirth that takes place after the warrior has given its life for a higher cause. This rebirth is liberation, and it occurs only after great effort and many trials. This is the way of the 39 gene key, and the reward is the annihilation of fear through the death of the smaller self. This is the true meaning and symbolism of the warrior, and is why we all aspire to it. Liberation may sound similar to freedom, but there are subtle and important differences. Freedom represents the 55th gene key. There is, in fact, a deep connection between the 55th and 39th gene keys. At the siddhic level, the resonance of each word is precise and specific. Liberation is a provocative energy. It tests and challenges those who are drawn to it. The person manifesting the siddhi of liberation is profoundly dangerous to be around, not in the sense of physical danger, but in the sense of the shadow patterns. This is not a person that treads lightly around you. This is the force that bores right into your heart of your low frequency patterns and strips you down to the bones of your true being. These are the teachers who direct the force of their love right at the weakest chink in your armor. Just as the lower frequency of this gene key pushes your buttons out of reaction, the sage displaying the 39th siddhi will use any technique at their disposal to test the limits of your surrender. If you take anything personally, then you will still have limits to your surrender. The 39th gene key is related to the 55th gene key in the same way in which a spring mechanism releases an explosive energy. When all human seeking has exhausted itself, a great need to act rises, and this pressure is currently building within all human DNA. Life itself is struggling to transcend its struggle through human beings, and the 39th shadow builds the tension for change until it is released through the human genome, as the siddhi of liberation. Even before the mutation of the 55th gene key, we will hear the dynamic explosion of this energy, which provokes the mutation itself. Thus, we will see how the energy of liberation ultimately provokes the release of freedom. Wow, that's a good one. I like the content of all this. Well, there we go, you awesome frequencies, which are simultaneously out there and within here. Stay tuned. There may or may not be a commentary section.